Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today. My name is Lorna Bladen. I'm the head of campaigns at Enterprise Nation, and delighted to be joined by Danny Matthews this afternoon, one of our advisors on the Enterprise Nation marketplace. This is part of the Go and Grow online campaign, and Danny will be talking about the secret to innovation and staying ahead as a small business. If anyone's not heard of our Go and Grow online campaign, you can find out all about it on our website. The campaign is supported by 123reg, Microsoft and .com, and we deliver online masterclasses, offline events, and loads of practical content to help small businesses embrace the web. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Danny. If anyone has any questions during the webinar, please use the chat box. And what we'll do is we'll save those until the end, and I'll pose those to Danny. So enjoy, everybody, and over to you, Danny.
Great, thank you very much, Lorna, and welcome everyone to this presentation, The Secret to Innovation and Staying Ahead as a Small Business. You know, for small businesses, it's quite daunting when we think about technology and how to use technology to grow our business. It's quite daunting to think that we've only just got round to getting used to social media and all these different marketing platforms and channels and webinars, and there's a lot of stuff out there that you can use to grow your business. But once you get into one, it's a bit, you're going down the rabbit hole, and it always looks a lot deeper than what it is. So I want to help you through this presentation. Just understand that really simple technology can be used to grow your business and to grow online. So small businesses, I love small businesses. You honestly, all of you, every single one of you is awesome. And the reason for that is that you can act really quickly in any situation. I've sat with board members and people high up at huge corporations and companies, and all of them are absolutely terrified because they know that small businesses, when they need to change, they make a decision and then they change. It's really simple. Whereas big corporations, they have to go through consultation periods and they have a lot of things that need to be done before they change. So it's not so easy for them. So, you know, you have no board level approval. So when things happen like Brexit, elections, tax changes, rules, regulations, when anything moves and the goalpost moves in or around your business, you can very quickly change as long as you make that decision. So you're in complete control, and the experience that your customers have with you is controllable by you. So I want to go through just a couple of stats, I suppose, or one or two things. There's 50% plus small business owners fear disruption will put them out of business by 2018. I can't remember whether I've seen that stat, but I've seen it and it terrified me because it's so simple and so easy for small businesses to change and input these kind of things into what you do every day. To change your customer's experience and make it more valuable for them. But over half of businesses fear that disruption is going to affect them negatively, and that's a real shame because they make up the majority of business taxpayers' money to the government. So, but it's not surprising that people are fearing this kind of thing, because if you think back to, let's have a look at some of the companies that have been through this kind of process. So you can look at people like Blockbuster and Kodak and Woolworths. We've all seen the sort of demise of them. And Blockbuster, actually Kodak in particular, there was a guy at Kodak called Don Strickland, and he was the vice president of Kodak digital cameras. He was essentially the guy that invented digital cameras. And the whole board would say to him that this isn't going to happen, and you know, it's a bit of a fad. And unfortunately, it moved Kodak out of the film industry because they thought digital was going to kill it. And now I think the last time I seen Kodak as a brand or a logo was on printers. So they slowly got squeezed out of the digital of the camera and film market because of digital and not keeping up with that kind of time. The same happened with Nokia, and we've seen how huge the Apple have become now. And I remember seeing a quote about Nokia, and I think it must have been the CEO or someone high up that worked there, but there was a guy at Nokia that said, we've been trying to break mobile phones for years, that Apple aren't just going to come into the market and take over. And look now, look at the difference that Apple's made to everyone's lives. We live our life on our mobile phones. So it's really interesting to see these humongous companies that find it really, really difficult to change and to shift when the market shifts. We've also seen Amazon do the same with Walmart, and I know Walmart were very skeptical about Amazon in the beginning. People like Uber and Netflix that have all come out as these new innovators, when really anyone could have done this. Any small business could have done this. Now, this is my background is in financial services, and there hasn't been a bank apart from Metro Bank, but apart from Metro Bank, there hasn't been a bank license given in the UK for I think it was over 80 years, and now all of a sudden we're seeing people like Atom Bank, Tandem, Monzo is probably the first that did it differently. And all these other types of financial services firms that have come out innovating the way that we see our money and the way that we deal with our cash flow and how we pay for things. And so the world is really, really moving quite fast. And even banks are being disrupted, the foundation of our money, our exchange of value. And the Bank of England are constantly testing technology. And the Bank of England are doing a lot with all different kinds of technology all the time, just to test the viability of us doing more with technology in industries. So why do all of these organizations fail? And then we have others that flourish. Have you asked yourself why Airbnb wasn't started by Hilton? This is what Airbnb should have looked like. It should have been a Hilton brand, or it should have been I'm trying to think of another hotel brand now, but it should have been one of the big worldwide brands of hotels and leisures that started Airbnb. It should have been them in the industry doing something to push that sector forward. But for me, I believe it comes down to how you think and the mindset, and the way you think really determines the decisions that you make to change. And this is my experience, and I believe it comes down to three things: abundance, how you think about abundance, how much you give. So how much do you give, and what do you give back? And then finally, innovation. So how do you think about innovation inside your company and outside? Do you take tips from outside of your industry and pull them into your own? So I think these are the three things that you need to stay ahead as a small business, and way ahead of those bigger companies that take forever to change anything. So I want to demonstrate this to you. So abundance. Abundance is a funny one, because abundance says that it's that there is enough of everything. And I've got an example to show this. So if you imagine you and I are walking down the street, and we're breathing normally, breathing in, breathing out, walking down the street. We don't think about where that oxygen is coming from. We don't think about, if I breathe, it's going to take away the oxygen that you have in order to live, in order to fill your lungs, breathe out, and carry on with your day-to-day living. We don't think about that. Oxygen and air is abundant. That's how we think of it. There's enough of it. However, imagine that you are scuba diving. You're scuba diving with a friend, your partner, wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, auntie, and you are scuba diving together, and one of your pipes break, or your tank malfunctions, and the other person that you're with comes over to you, and you have to use their oxygen. All of a sudden, there's not enough for both of you. There's not enough oxygen to carry you both to go further. So you obviously have to go back, or obviously the worst happens. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the abundance of air and how your environment affects your business and how it affects you. So I want you to think about that just for a minute, about abundance and the situations that you put yourself and your business in order to thrive and in order to feel abundance in the company. Now the second one is giving. So how many of you give? And I don't just mean, you know, it's always great. I really believe that you should give as a person, not just as a business. And businesses always do well from partnering with charities and giving back to communities and centres, and helping people that are around them to thrive, not just for themselves in the business, but other people as well. But that's not the kind of giving that I'm talking about. You know, gratitude is a very fascinating thing to me, where if you are experiencing gratitude, you cannot experience fear or anger. It's not possible for the human brain to feel those emotions when you are feeling gratitude. So, and I do feel that is important, but that's not what I'm getting to. What I'm getting to is giving away business, giving away your best stuff. So I really struggled with this when I started my business. I really struggled with the fact that someone was telling me, you know, you need to give away your best stuff. And that's what's going to attract people, because you're giving it away. And my argument was always, but why would I give it away when they can pay for it? And the idea here goes deep down into how trust is built in your company and in your business, and how trust is built throughout the process and the experience that your customers have. Trust is built throughout a process. It's almost like the customer service is what builds trust into someone, but by the time they get to customer service, most of the time they've already bought something from you. So there was a term that was coined by Don Peppers and Martha Rogers in the US called trustability, and it's basically the act of building trust without them first having to buy off you. So how do you build trust? How do you build trust in someone that hasn't already dealt with you? Well, you do it by giving something away, giving something of value that is free of charge or at very little cost but very high value, in order to build that trust. Let them experience the process, let them experience being a customer of yours, in order to draw them into your company, like you, trust you, know who you are, and eventually do business in the long term for you. And that's a really important point. So I want to stick on this giving thing a minute, and I want to give you a little bit of an example of my own story. When I used to be in financial services as a mortgage advisor, one of the kind of unfortunate things about being in financial services is that you have to adhere to working with certain lenders. You know, there are certain banks which don't want to deal with brokers. For example, HSBC, they don't deal with brokers. It's not, or they deal with one or two, but at the time they didn't deal with any. So, however, HSBC had the best deals. They had the best rates, the lowest prices, the lowest rates, the lowest charges. The criteria was a bit tight, but they were essentially, if you hit the right criteria, it would be perfect for you. You get the best deal in the market. Now, how do I compete with that as a broker when I'm trying to give honest and impartial advice? So what I would do is I would sit with customers. I would sit with them for an hour to 2 hours sometimes, and I'd go through the whole process. And then at the end, I would say, this is the list of lenders that have come up for you. HSBC's at the top, but I can't arrange that for you. Here is the product code. This is the telephone number. And many times I sat there and actually called them for the customer and taught them through the process while I was there. It may have taken 2 to 3 hours, but by giving them that confidence, there's two things that happen from that. The first is, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they would say, look, you're already here. Go to the next one down. And that was their decision that they wanted to make. The second is, as I said, I would sit with them, go through the process, and at the end, we would see if they got the mortgage or not. And the referrals from that customer would be 10 times what I would have got if I didn't do that. So by giving, I do mean giving with gratitude, and by giving back to society and to causes and partnering with charities, but also I mean get used to giving value without any expectation in return, because that's what builds trustability. And with trustability, they don't need to be your customer before they experience what it's like to work with you. So that's a really, really important point that I want to drive home there. Number 3, innovation. So this is an interesting one. Innovation, and you'll find out shortly a little bit of my background and why this sort of links with my old business as a mortgage advisor, but the quality of your life is only determined by the quality of your questions. And if you believe that, then the quality of innovation in your business is only determined by the questions you ask yourself about that business. People don't like the thought of having to learn another software for accounting or email marketing or social media, or now I know chatbots are starting to be big. I'm working a lot with chatbots and Facebook Messenger. But they don't want to have to kind of learn another thing. You know, as I said, we've just got around to the fact that we're using social media for business and not just 15-year-olds, you know, messaging each other and all kinds of stuff. So, and I know it's tough to have to learn something else and have to get used to another process. But let me ask you, what is the alternative? What happens when you decide, I'm not going to learn this? This isn't for me. This isn't for my business. It's not going to help my business. What happens? Well, the answer is that if you don't put yourself out of business first, then someone else is going to do it for you. So I want to talk about business models of the future. But before that, I want to challenge you to think about the questions that you ask yourself about your business. If you are looking to grow and you're looking to use technology to forge better relationships, help with customer services, help processes, automate things, earn an income alongside your business that is recurring revenue and a real consistent and dependable revenue. If you want to do all that, you can't just have your business as it is now. It doesn't work that way. You know, remember the Einstein quote. I might get this wrong, but the Einstein quote: "If you've always done what you've always, or if you've done what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got." And that is exactly what I want you to understand here. So, business models of the future. So most of you probably would have seen some of these. E-learning. You know, there was an e-learning platform that was valued at 800 million just a few months ago, and it's that I think they raised something like 100 million. So it was. So e-learning is a huge passion of mine. I'm really passionate about courses and people supplementing their learning online. And some of the biggest learning academies and some of the biggest universities in the world, places like Harvard, Stanford, you know, all these high-flying universities in the US, they have their own e-learning platforms. And what they don't realize is, by them having e-learning platforms, it's almost devaluing what they have as a university. So you have to be careful when you use this technology, that you use it in the right way and you use it for growth, something that's not going to be detrimental to your current business. Subscriptions are obviously big. A lot of what we do now, especially with software as a service, things like the webinar software we're on now, it's a subscription model where you get recurring revenue, and that is a lot of businesses these days have that recurring revenue kind of model. Now there's 55 of these business models, but these are the main ones of what I like to focus on and what most people can get some value out of. So the third one is pay on results. Now everyone wants to know what you can do before they pay. That would be an ideal for everyone. Not always the case for every type of business, but if you can, perfect. You know, when I was a mortgage advisor, I didn't charge a fee until the mortgage was complete. So that's a really good example of that. And then things like remote order fulfillment, like drop shipping, for example, where you have a automated system which people can buy from your shop and it's distributed out of a warehouse or a distribution center somewhere else, like Amazon, for example. All of this is powered by data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and many, many other wonderful things. But don't confuse yourself with these terms that we use, because unfortunately they are not, or fortunately for you, they are not as difficult and as confusing as they sound. But the main thing about these business models is that you need to think about your business and whether you are transactional. You know, do you sell something like a product or service and get paid for that one thing, and then the customer buys and there's no long-term relationship? is that how your business works? Because most people I meet have that exact business model. It's a transaction. You buy something, you pay, I provide it, and that's the end. And you hope that that experience leads to another transaction. And it's not the way to do business in 2017. We're in such a great age where we can build recurring revenue models and make it really, really easy for people to buy from us, whether it's a physical product or a service. So you can look at the companies I mentioned earlier, like Blockbuster. We have Netflix now. It's a monthly subscription. What do you think is happening in the background? Hardly anything. No one really needs to do anything. They keep developing and keep improving the service, the customer service, the platform, making it easy for people to buy from them. But there's no huge office with millions and tens of thousands of customer service advisors. They don't need it. It's an online service that you pay for. It's a recurring revenue model, and not a lot of the traditional business model money and profit goes into maintaining that business model. The same with Uber. It's a service as an app. Uber don't own any taxis. They don't own any cabs or black cars or executive travel cars. They don't own anything. It's a platform that enables you to get that service and to get that service quickly. So most of these do one very, very simple thing, and that is to save you time. And that's really a business model of the future. So this is what happens when you start thinking innovatively. You start to understand the value of time and the value that people put on time. Even recently, I think it's We Buy Any Car, they've started, instead of saying we can buy your car, they realized that there were some people that were saying, so you call We Buy Any Car and they'll give you £500 for a £5,000 car. Then they realized that. Now, they knew all along that that was the case. What they didn't tap into was the fact that you can sell it for £4,500 to £5,000 if you put it on the market for 3 months. But if you want money in a week, we're going to give you 500. And it's the way up of, that's quite an extreme example, but that's a way up of the value of time and what we put on that, because We Buy Any Car is still a thriving business. So just think about the value of time and how you can transfer that kind of rule to your business. And back to the question. So the kind of process of innovation, or the level of innovation that happens in your business is not determined by resource. It's not determined by money or people. It's determined by the questions that you ask yourself. So as I said before, the quality of innovation is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So in my situation, I was at a point where I was doing 6 appointments a week because it's all that I could fit in as a mortgage advisor. I was traveling 1 to 2 hours to see clients. Once I'd sat down with a client for an hour or two, I'd drive back, and that would take 1 hour to 2 hours. And then the paperwork involved was really intensive. And there was a lot of backwards and forwards, and I didn't even know whether the client would get the mortgage yet. They had to go through this whole process. And that was quite daunting, because it meant that I was spending all this time with customers and with clients and providing the best possible service I could, and I wasn't getting paid for it. I said before about paid on results. I charged a fee on completion, so nothing would happen. So that was a real shame, but I needed to change, and I needed to innovate, and I needed to do something. So I decided to build a platform which reduced the time to apply for a mortgage from between 10 and 15 hours to under 60 minutes. And I did that by asking myself one question. If you were to start a company today, so if you woke up this morning and you said, I'm going to start a company, and that company was going to put you out of business, what would that company look like? Because when you really start to think about that, you start to think innovatively about what could happen next and what the next step is for everyone. And if you were a taxi driver 10, 11, 12 years ago, and you were driving around the streets of London in a black cab, what would you do to put yourself out of business? Well, you would provide that to everyone at the touch of a button. We still had iPhones back then. You know, anyone could have done this. Hackney Carriage could have been Uber, but they didn't. Usually it comes from outside the industry, and I didn't want that to happen to me. So I asked myself, if I was going to start a company to put myself out of business, what would it look like? And I knew then from that moment that I was going to have to build something that people could do really easily without an appointment online, and that they could send documents online and have everything in an online portal ready and waiting. So that's what I did. And that saved a bunch of paperwork and became, you know, it was only launched, so I relaunched my business completely from nothing. I took 8 months out of being a mortgage advisor and training other mortgage advisors in the meantime, and decided that I was not going to be, you know, this Woolworths or this Blockbuster or this Kodak. I wasn't going to be one of those companies. I was going to thrive. So this was my Uber moment. This is Morgie, and it's an online application process. Now, since launching Morgie in January 16th, we took about just over 1.36 million in applications through the system. So, you know, not that much, but it helped it to get started. And I decided that that was my time. That was my time to put that back into development. And so I asked myself the question again, I'm going to put this into development. If I was going to start a company that was going to put this Morgie out of business, what would it look like? And decided that I would be the person to distribute that and provide that for all the other mortgage advisors in the country, and then see if I can develop it for the world. And to be truly innovative, you always have to ask your question. It was my time. So is it time for your Uber moment? You know, in your company, is this something that you could be doing better? Is this something that you could be innovating in, automating? Take all the things that take time and inefficiency out of your day. Could you make that process easier for someone by using simple technology for those better building those better relationships? So, just to go over, innovation in your business is not determined by the resources. It didn't take me a lot of money. It took me time, but that was my time and I chose to do that. So it's not determined by resources, but the questions that you ask yourself. So that's a little bit about my story and how I managed to really innovate in my company. And I only realized really towards the towards the launch of Morgie that I realized what is driving me to do this. And it was quite funny. I would have people say, people actually asking me, how do you think like this? It's like they found it bizarre that I thought different to them, or you know, there was a process that I went through that was different to what they went through to discover what was next for the business and how to grow and what to do. And I realized that it was actually just a part of how I thought about the business and the industry and what was going on. And after many conversations, realized that the first place to start was the biggest inefficiency, and that was in the application process. And now the biggest inefficiency is the fact that all other mortgage advisors haven't got that kind of technology or expertise to do it. So I committed myself to becoming like a chief technical officer to small businesses, and started coaching businesses to go through this process and stay ahead. Because, you know, and after meeting with companies like Google and Facebook and Accenture and speaking to these innovation departments at places like Barclays and watching all these campaigns that happen, like the Go and Grow campaign, it's really difficult for people to stay ahead. And I know that small businesses are so powerful, and it's so easy to change things in small businesses that you can get way ahead of the big boys. So I want to empower you to do that, and hopefully this has given you a little bit of what you need to start your journey. And I'm hoping that that is the case and what you need. So that is my presentation. I think we're going to have some questions.
Hi, everybody. Lorna again. Danny, that was fab. Super, super inspiring and engaging. So thank you ever so much for sparing your time to deliver that presentation. We have a couple of questions in. First one is from Mark. I worry that if I innovate that it will cost my business a lot of money, and as a startup I do not have a lot of disposable cash. What would you say to that, Danny?
So Morgie was completely bootstrapped. I did it all myself. I didn't have a developer. I didn't have a web designer. There's many tools that you can use now which are already built for you. So if you want to, for example, if you want to build a chatbot for your website, you don't need to code a chatbot. You can just sign up to a service where you can build it yourself, completely white labeled, so it looks like it's your own. And that's what you can use to try and bootstrap that business. When it comes to, I get the question all the time about people worrying, because what a lot of people think is if I'm going to innovate in my company, I have to almost neglect my current business in order to change it and move it to somewhere else. And what I try to empower people to do is find something that is an inefficiency and try to solve that problem by running it parallel to your current business. Almost treat it like a test. So yes, you're going to have to put some time equity into it to try it, but as I said, we're at a point now where technology is moving so fast that what other choice have we got? So I want to empower people to just use these tools and run them alongside parallel to the business, just to alleviate any of that risk that you feel may affect you. And if it works, transition over to that. And if it doesn't, you can get rid of it and try something new. But the main thing is that you're always testing and making sure that people understand that that you're trying to move the business forward and testing new things. The most important part of that process is not assuming anything and actually getting a product in someone's hands and finding out how they use it, rather than just assuming that someone's going to enjoy it or not enjoy it, etc. So hopefully that answers his question. What was his name?
That was Mark.
Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, Mark.
I have another question. This is posed by a lady called Maria. What can you give away for free if you have a high-end product? Question, Maria.
Great question. So I'm trying to think of an example of a high-end product. If these are live and Maria is there, please type an example. But high-end products, so luxury items, for example. So I know someone who makes watches. It's very rare nowadays that someone has a traditional business.
Maria is in jewelry.
Fantastic. So jewelry is a very personal thing. So when I say you give something away for free, this can be anything to help to run alongside, a little bit like the last question, to run alongside what you currently sell. So, for example, Rolex have every successful company actually has a free giveaway. Most of the time you just don't realize it. So, for example, Rolex have a style guide, for example. So you can go onto their website and you can view a style guide. Believe it or not, that's really valuable to someone, that they can see someone who wears the same clothes as them, has the same hair as them, maybe does the same job or has the same lifestyle. They can see them wearing that piece of jewelry or that watch, and that gives them a lot of enjoyment. That is the value that you give them. So really the answer to the question, Maria, is that you can do something that complements the jewelry, whether it's a style guide or it could be a number of things. That's just an example, and believe it or not, people find value out of that. And don't be afraid to go to your customers and say, I want to give you something for free. Here's a couple of options, or feel free to suggest, and get your customers to give you the answer to that question, because your customers will reply and give you a really good idea of what you can do to provide some kind of free value or something very valuable to them without any cost to you, maybe just time to put together a style guide or get a photographer, for example. But it'll pay off in the long run, because people really connect with getting some free value and taking what you have to give them as a customer. Hopefully that helps, Maria.
Well, Maria says brilliant and thank you. So hopefully it looks like that was helpful. So there's another question from Julie too. And did you mention, Danny, a white label platform?
No.
Julie's wondering whether you can recommend one.
It depends. So when I say a white label platform,
Yes.
what I mean is that there are many services that you can use. For example, here's a really good example. When you receive an email, you know that someone has sent it from MailChimp, for example, because it's got the MailChimp logo at the bottom. But most services now, you can pay a very small monthly subscription to remove that, and it just looks like you've sent an email. And believe it or not, even though people don't see that as an important part, so people think, it's only the MailChimp logo, who cares, no one really looks at the bottom anyway. Without that, it's not just a logo, it becomes more personal and intimate with that person. So I used a lot of examples, or a few examples, about chatbots. Chatbots are very good because even though they're automated, they're actually very personal, and they go to your messenger inbox, which is a very intimate and personal place. So actually it creates more of a connection that way. So when I mentioned about white label platforms, what I mean by that, it really is these services that you can have, like email marketing and CRM systems that you can use without a big fat logo spread all over it, so it looks like your own and not just that you're trying some tactic or something to try and get people through the door. And it's a bit more of a personal experience. Hopefully that helps. If there's a follow-up question, then obviously let us know.
Wonderful. One more question, because we have run out of time, but if anyone has any other questions that we're not able to answer, then I'm sure I can do my best to get those over to Danny. You can answer afterwards. But we've got one more question from Nisa. I am looking for an e-commerce web builder. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. So me and my wife used to run an apparel e-commerce business, so we've got quite a lot of research experience making sure everything runs correctly and that we don't have to do too much. So there's some really amazing ones out there that will integrate with WordPress, because I know a lot of people use WordPress. So things like Shopify and WooCommerce. There's also a few that stand alone. You can use Shopify without the logo, without actually installing it. You can they have a sort of a built-in website, if you like, that you can customize yourself. So all the big names, if you've seen them before, WooCommerce, Shopify, Magento is another one, which is okay. It requires a little bit more technical knowledge. I would start with something like Shopify. It's really, really simple, very customizable, not very expensive. And their platform is built on a secure server, so you can do things. You can people can create passwords and have a proper account with you.
Lovely, Danny. Well, thank you ever so much to yourself for sparing your time to kind of share all of your expertise today, and to everyone else for tuning in. And as everyone knows, well, hopefully you know, as an Enterprise Nation member, we host these on a weekly basis, these member masterclasses. So tune in next week. And thanks, Danny. You have a great afternoon.
And you too. Thanks, Lorna.
Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.